Batman is one of the most iconic superheroes of all time. People defend him to the ends of the earth, saying he could do stuff he reasonably couldn't. However, his success has definitely spawned some homages and other heroes' origins, either subconsciously, knowingly, or as a way to respect one of the most recognizable heroes of all time. But which of those are the most iconic? That's what we're exploring today. Let's do it. In at 10, Big Daddy. Damon McCready was a former police officer, the father of Mindy McCready, and was the crime-fighting superhero Big Daddy. He was a prominent character in Kick. He is recognized as the first legitimate real-life superhero in the Kick-Ass universe. Damon spent 5 years in jail, missing the first 5 years of his daughter's life, who was placed in the care of Damon's former partner Marcus. His time in jail consisted of him planning and scheming away about how to get revenge on Frank D'Amico. Once freed from jail, he reunited with his daughter Mindy, and he set to work executing this plan. He then proceeded to teach his young daughter about weaponry, fighting styles, and how to take a bullet in the chest by wearing a bulletproof vest in the years that followed. Big Daddy is very clearly meant to be a riff on Batman. However, considering how that's the actual joke, I decided to put it at the start of this list. He even has like the Batman cowl, but without the long ears. They're short like a cat instead of like the long and pointy ones that Batman is usually depicted with. In at 9, Midnighter. Midnighter, alongside his future husband Apollo, was a part of the top secret Stormwatch team created by the first weatherman, Henry Bendix. Nobody but Bendix himself knew of the team's existence. Bendix built them as superhuman, and when they donned their costumes and spoke their code names, their previous identities ceased to exist. Midnighter has the power to predict how a situation will happen before it starts. This allows him to run through any given situation millions of times in his mind, instantly covering every possible result before the first move is even made. He uses this information to predict the actions and or the reactions of others, countering their moves almost before they even think to make them, effectively making Midnighter the greatest tactician in the history of mankind, almost like the world's greatest detective. In at 8, Nemesis. Tom Tresser, aka Nemesis, is a vigilante turned operative for the US government and a master of disguise. His default costume is a black turtleneck sweater with a balance as a chest symbol and a chest holster. He was an applicant to an unnamed government agency. His brother Craig was an undercover agent infiltrating a criminal syndicate called the Council. Craig was brainwashed into killing their family friend Bren Marshall and was subsequently killed in self-defense by fellow agents. Tom thus became the Nemesis, preferring to use an alias instead of his own dishonored family name. With the assistance of Batman, he cleared his brother's name and saw the men responsible for his brother's murder dead. Nemesis is believed to have sacrificed himself and died in the helicopter crash that killed the Council's leader. It is then later revealed that he freed himself at the last second and fell into the river, horribly injured in the explosion. His body was found by federal men who then took him to a hospital. In at 7, Night Thrasher. Dwayne Taylor was the son of Daryl and Melody Taylor. Dwayne's father was a member of a military unit fighting in the Siang Kong War, which discovered the secret temple of the Dragon's Breath. At the temple, a sorceress named Tai of her daughters gave her their mystically powered offspring to use for her own nefarious purposes. Taylor is an extremely skilled hand-to-hand combatant, trained in many martial arts including an unspecified Japanese martial art. Athletic prowess and fighting ability are pretty damn good. He is able to hold his own against the Punisher. He is also an excellent gymnast. As for his weapons, he has a scrimsticks, gauntlets that can fire pepper spray, sleeping gas, or explosively launch his metal scrimsticks, and an emergency micro Uzi. Various explosive, spur jacks to blow out tires, napalm gels, smoke capsules, magnesium flares, incendiary packs, ball bearings to trip foes, a large hammer, laser sword, and an armored skateboard that he can use as a weapon or shield. Basically, he's Batman on a skateboard who after fighting crime will just totally shred it at the park, bro. And at 6, the Black Fox. The Black Fox is an audacious jewel thief who has a long criminal career in the United States and Europe. His crimes that brought him repeatedly into conflicts with the hero Spider-Man. He tried to escape Spider-Man by moving to LA, where he occupied the mansion of a rich couple while they were on vacation in Switzerland. Unfortunately, Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man, was in Los Angeles at the same time for a book signing event and defeated him again, although he showed mercy and let Black Fox avoid prison. The Black Fox is a highly skilled trained athlete. Although thanks to his advanced age, he is no longer as proficient as he would have been when young, he is still incredibly agile. He can, for instance, swing on a line from one building to another and scale the sides of buildings. And his suit is very reminiscent of Batman, save for the yellow and gray, since he doesn't actually want to be seen. He's basically what if Batman got old and turned to crime, which to me is hilarious. Halfway through into number 5, Green Arrow. As the young heir to the billion-dollar corporate dynasty Queen Industries, Oliver Queen was a wild socialite. His behavior so shamed his father Robert, and he was relegated to clerical work on an oil rig in the Pacific. Yep, it's better than military camp. Naturally, Oliver turned the rig into a hub for his parties. At one such party, a helicopter meant to be carrying a famous rock star was commandeered by oil-thieving conspirators, who soon took over the rig. Against the warnings of his friend Tommy Merlin, Oliver recklessly faced the organization leader, armed with only a bow and arrow, courtesy of his father to this point fruitless training. The operatives were armed with a detonator to a battery of explosives, including some which they had strapped to Oliver's girlfriend Lena. Oliver managed to shoot the detonator out of the operative's hand, but it bounced and activated, blowing up half the rig and killing his girlfriend. After this, Oliver washed up on the shore of a deserted island and was forced to survive with only his bow and arrow for a year. A lot of people compare Batman and Green Arrow, and I can honestly see why, despite being a Green Arrow fanboy. However, Green Arrow did end up eventually having his own personality and being more lighthearted than Bats. In it for Shroud, Max Coleridge was only 10 when his parents were gunned down right before his eyes. He decided to dedicate his life to fighting crime after that. He received a Bachelor of Science in Law for college. Upon graduating from college, he joined the mysterious temple called the Cult of Kali, where he studied various styles of martial arts. Over 7 years of intense training, he graduated from that temple. During the celebration ceremony, he was branded with the Kiss of Kali and a red-hot iron. Following a period of intense pain and hospitalization, he realized that his eyesight had been replaced by mystic extrasensory perception. Traveling back to America, he adopted the identity of Shroud. The Shroud spied on the Fantastic Four and followed them to Latveria, where Dr. Doom battled Namor. Shroud wanted to kill Doom for his crimes against humanity, but he failed in his mission. He did, however, come close to it when Doom had teamed up with the Red Skull. The two villains, however, were too strong for Shroud to handle alone. This is very Batman-esque. I mean, like, right down to the whole secret cult studying martial arts thing. It's hard to deny this one. In at 3, NIGHTHAWK. Kyle Richmond was the son of a wealthy businessman, Arthur Richmond, owner of Richmond Enterprises, and his wife Penelope. While his father was mostly absent on business trips, his mother died in a tragic accident, leaving him in the care of a governess. Upon reaching schooling age, Kyle was placed in a private school. His first day, he began to cry, prompting his classmates to laugh at him, which broke into a fight. Kyle grew up a troubled kid, constantly getting into trouble at school and growing arrogant due to his family's wealth. One year as an adolescent, he struck his principal, knowing that his father's money and influence would prevent any repercussions for his actions. Kyle attempted to join the military but was rejected due to a heart murmur and became obsessed with training his body and curing that murmur. During this period, Kyle's father died in a plane crash, leaving him the sole heir to the Richmond fortune. Penultimately, in at number 2, Daredevil. Daredevil's life is a mix of joy and tragedy. The story of Matt Murdock began with his father, Jonathan, battling Jack Murdock, who was raising his sons Matt and Mike alone, claiming that Matt's mother had died. Jack wanted his sons to be more successful than he was, and he impressed upon Matt the need to constantly study instead of playing sports with the other kids. Jack hoped that Matt would one day become a doctor or a lawyer instead of the uneducated pug like himself. Hey, don't hate on pugs. This led the neighborhood kids to bully the cowardly Matt as Daredevil, while his twin brother came to his aid. Matt took out his frustrations by secretly training in his father's gym. One day, Matt saw a blind man walking towards an oncoming truck. Matt pushed the man out of the way, and the truck crashed and spilled radioactive isotopes out, striking Matt across the face and then blinding him. It's kind of ironic. While recovering in the hospital, Matt discovered that his hearing, smell, taste, and touch were amplified to superhuman degrees. He also developed a radar sense of sorts that formed a mental picture of his surroundings, so he could still kind of see. And finally, in number 1, Moon Knight. Mark Spector is better known as the vigilante Moon Knight. Once a mercenary, Mark Spector was left for dead in the desert, where he was revived by the moon god Khonshu. Appointed as Khonshu's first and high priest, Moon Knight enacts justice to protect those who travel at night. Spector also suffers from dissociative identity disorder, also known as DID, which has paved the way for his use of other identities, including millionaire Stephen Grant and cab driver Jake Lockley. Since the early days, Mark has mostly worked alone, but he's also been a member of a few superhero teams, including the Avengers and Heroes for Hire. Recently, Mark discovered that he had a daughter named Beatrice with his longtime lover Marlene alone. But when Khonshu sensed Mephisto's plans for world domination, Mark left her to fight by his god's side and prevent that from coming true. When Khonshu succumbed to madness, however, Mark had to turn against him and help the Avengers defeat him. And while he may be compared to Batman, the similarities are really only skin deep. But he has a series coming up on Disney+, so I had to include him for the thumbnail. That's all the time we have for today, friends. Thank you all so much for watching. I have been Sean, remain caught up in a row, and I'll see you in another video.